Chris, thank you. After 2 long years and a 400-plus page report, the guy behind the Russia investigation finally breaking his silence. We're taking a closer look at what you're saying about Robert Mueller's comments in this morning's Digital Dive. Now, the big takeaway, Mueller said, charging President Trump with a crime, it's not going to happen because of federal rules. But he did emphasize that he did not exonerate the president either. Listen to this.
If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report explains that decision.
Now, Mueller also said his written report speaks for itself and he does not plan to testify before Congress. This, of course, reigniting the debate on whether or not the president should be impeached. And if there were any sort of impeachment proceedings, they would begin with the House Judiciary Committee. And that committee's chairman, Jerry Nadler, says all options are on the table. So we're asking our Sunrisers if Mueller's statement changes your mind about the Russia investigation. Let us know. Use the hashtag Sunrisers. Meanwhile, President Trump actually tweeted his response to Mueller's report yesterday, saying nothing changes from the report. There was insufficient evidence, and therefore, in our country, a person is innocent. The case is closed. Now, here's what our Sunrisers are saying about it this morning. Rick, he says, I accept Trump as my president. That's it. He still has no effect on my life. And we'll read one more here from another Sunriser. Tina, good morning. She says, Mueller clearly said today if he found no evidence of collusion, he would have said it point blank. He did not say that. He said, Congress, do your job. So if you'd like to chime in on the conversation, join everybody else. Use the hashtag Sunrisers.
Yeah, I'm sure this will still create a lot of political talk, so it's far from over. We'll be hearing about this for a long time.
Oh, yeah, at least until 2020.